EIT Health Spain is part of the European Institute of Innovation and Technology. That is the largest innovation and entrepreneurship network in Europe. So thanks for having us today, and thanks to South Summit and to AstraZeneca, and thanks to the panelists for being here today. And just for starting, if you want, you can please briefly describe yourself, what you do.
Perfect. Shall I go ahead then?
Sure.
Lovely to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation and the introduction. I'm Sara Zangri, the CEO at Medea Mind. We are a deep tech startup dedicated to improving access to quality care in mental health. We do so with a software that is dedicated to removing that extra work for professionals that very often leads to lacks of efficacy in our field. And I come from that field being a psychologist and a researcher, so we started the company as an objective of transferring and making sure that the science that has already improved the clinical outcomes in mental health actually gets to every patient. So I'll be happy to give you my perspective as a startup founder in healthcare, and especially in mental health, that we know is a bit of a tougher subject when it comes to funding.
Thanks a lot, Sara. My name is Alejo Costa. I'm GP of CRB in Verbio. We are currently raising our third fund in digital health. Objective is 50 million to invest in 20 to 25 startups in Series A and also late seed in some cases. We are suffering some of the problems of fundraising as everybody else, but later we are going to speak about that. And of course, looking for good startups like Sara's and looking forward to know more.
Thank you, Alejo. I am Ana Barrenechea. It's great to see everyone here, even though they're blinding lights. It is my pleasure to give you more of an institutional perspective. I have worked at EU bodies, including the European Investment Fund, and currently I work at Invest Health, which is the investment arm of EIT Health. And it's been really exciting to be Strategic Initiatives Manager here for the past year, previously Accelerator Program Manager for a couple years. And we are devoted to supporting startups across their innovation journey, and also facilitating co-investment, public-private support. So I look forward to having this very interesting discussion with very different perspectives, but all very important in their own way.
Thanks all. So, we have been having like a booming investment in the last years across sectors, especially after the pandemics in the healthcare and the health tech. But unfortunately, after that, in the last year and a half, we have seen a decrease in private VC investment across all sectors. So healthcare and health tech are not the only one. But on the other hand, these startups, the startups are trying to raise. So the good news are that they're still overcoming this lack of investment. We were talking about this later today. And so the good news is that the good teams with good projects that solves real unmet needs are overcoming this investment gap. So for starting, I would like to start with Alejo, and that's following to frame this discussion from your VC perspective. So how would you define the funding gap in the healthcare industry in the first place?
Thank you, Joan. And when I was thinking about the question that you sent me the other day, the first realization, the first question I made to myself is there a funding gap? And I say, come on, Alejo, obviously everybody is suffering of a funding gap. But then I went out into the internet and looked into some of the reports that we have. Indeed, as reputed agencies as Crunchbase are saying that VC funding worldwide has been reduced 53%. That's a reality, and that's what everybody is suffering of. However, for me the big question is whether this is a funding gap or this is a shift. Let me give you an example. In health, there are different agencies, Healthcare Dive, CB Insights, Fierce Health. They are all saying that on a quarter-to-quarter basis, the funding in Q1 2023 has been at the same level, or even in some cases higher than previous quarter in 2022. So there are pockets, or there are spaces that are not suffering so much this funding gap, and we need to be aware of that. Second element is on the volatility of this gap. Is this really, for me it's important to understand, is this a very volatile gap? Is this going to pass? Is this something that in a few months will go? I mean, the nature of how it happened and how it has started and the big strength of the new technologies speaks for that it will be as well volatile in the upper, in the going up or in the increasing side, in the same way as it has been in the decreasing side. And last but not least, and I tell this for a fact, I've been working 22 years in big corporations, there is an undeniable element in innovation, which is that there is a shift in the center of gravity in innovation from big corporations to smaller, flexible, more agile type of organizations like Sarah's and others, and this is not going to be stopped, meaning that the funding in VC, so there is big hopes for the funding in VC, despite the current situation. And sorry for the long-winded answer.
Thank you, Alejo. And given the important regulatory environment placed in the funding gap, and we have seen in the previous panel, and Javi's discussed previously, what are other hurdles that contributes to this theoretical funding gap?
Sorry, hurdles. So basically, the elements that are contributing to this funding gap. Obviously, economics has a lot to do with psychology, as we know. Silicon Valley crash reminded to many people to the crash that we have in 2014 it was, and everybody was thinking that a similar element was going to happen. This refrained investment a little bit, but very soon we realized that this was not the same type of crash, and there were protective measures being built up. So for me that's one of the important elements. But what are the other colleagues thinking about that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, in your case, Sarah, what is your perspective from a startup point of view?
At Medea, we say we're a science and technology startup. And in that order, there is the key to what healthcare actually has to be about when it comes to development of innovation. First, you need to be backed by science, and that means going through a lot of stages of validation. And then comes technology to build, in our case, a software into a product that will get to market. So here we have two important hurdles. The first one is, how will you support the validation that is necessary for you to test your product then into market? And once you want to get into that technological testing, which would be more toward market validation, who's going to support you through that? And that hurdle cannot be all in the hands of the startup, of course, because we generally tend to lack money, but also cannot just be on the shoulders of the investors. Otherwise, you would have to need several investors to support you through these stages. And we know that that actually doesn't guarantee anyone that the product will get to market. And so I think the main hurdle that we see there is how to support a startup, in my case, a science-based one, through those two initial stages. The first one, the validation part, and the second one, how to get you to market, that market access. And in our case, we found some strategies around these hurdles with the support of several partners. In our case, we were lucky enough to have the support of EIT in terms of acceleration, being part of their wildcard program last year. And we actually understood a lot of what the investors want out of the startup, and also how to get those KPIs that are important for them. So in order to address the funding gap, you first need to understand what the investor might want from you as a startup. In our case, in mental health, things are even a little bit more difficult than in healthcare in general. And so speaking to those investors for us was the key to understand those unmet points that we would need to raise funds. Sorry if that was a bit of a long answer.
Yeah.
Not at all. And also, it was a perfect segue because you kindly mentioned your participation in Wildcard, an EIT health program that we have for earlier maturity stage. And since you already mentioned that is an example of one of the suite of programs that we have for startups, I would like to talk a little bit more about how I observe, from my standpoint, the funding gap, particularly when it comes to larger rounds across Europe. We noticed that it is very difficult for a biotech startup or medtech startup, say, that are raising larger rounds, say around, let's say a biotech that's trying to raise 13 million for their Series A. It's very difficult for them to come across that liquidity on a domestic, in a domestic ecosystem, right? So They usually are subject to capital flight. We have talent flight, the brain drain, as they call it, and that excellent panel that just came before us. It was also, they touched upon it briefly, that we lose in Europe a lot of startups to more liquid markets like the United States and also China. And so from our perspective, at least as the Venture Center of Excellence program, which is another program that we have for more mature startups that are looking to fundraise rounds larger than 6 million, we see that at one point, startups face a hurdle where the funding is no longer able to be accompanied by domestic or national investors, and they're looking for additional liquidity, which is why the Venture Center of Excellence is a public-private co-investment program that is dedicated to trying to address this particular funding gap in a pre-IPO stage.
Thank you, Anna. So, well, now that we have framed what are possibly the possible hurdles of this potential funding gap, that truly it is there. So, well, let's try to start to think how to overcome it, right? So, Alejo, in your case, so how can investors mitigate the risk associated with the healthcare startups, and how does the impact of the investment decisions?
Yes, indeed. And first of all, let me correct one small comment I have not made before, which is thank you to EAT Health and AstraZeneca for being here. Thanks a lot for giving me the time to say something.
Thank you for being here, Alejo.
You're welcome. And from an investor's point of view, obviously, in uncertain times like this one, you need to be a bit more secure in the type of investment that you do. And this basically means do all the elements a little bit better, in a deeper way. So look for spaces which are representing a growth mid to long term, more than quick wins as a little bit more in the past. An example, and since we are a fan of digital health, is clearly digital health, that it's a space created by the evolution of the IT companies moving into health, by the medtech companies that are not able to transform digitally themselves, by pharma companies looking into the transformation as well, and clinical chains. They're all generating a space that there is no agency around the world that is forecasting a lower growth than 15% for the next 10 years. So this is a space that is relatively safe in this environment to grow for the next years. Yeah, I'm speaking for myself, of course, but reduce the level of direct investment is also a recommendation that we give to investors, in particular in this time. So a way to spread the risk is, instead of looking into or investing into a company that looks good, it feels good, etc., use a strong team, a team with the capabilities, and try to channel your investments through there into not only one but 20 companies that allow you to spread the risk and to reduce the uncertainty. Avoid first-time projects. Obviously, in these times, experienced asset managers, experienced GPs is what I think need to be looked for. Not disregarding all the others, of course, everybody does a good job, but in these times maybe we need to refrain a little bit ourselves of taking extra risks. And that's a personal one. Look for the X factor in the investment. I mean, the investments can look good, financially good, they can be great, but if there are X factors, as we see in certain projects, then something can happen with them. That's my advice to the investors.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Alejo. For instance, can you give us some successful examples of healthcare startups that have successfully navigated this gap?
There are some. I would refrain a little bit myself to promote some of them, but there are one in the area of TDH that is doing a very good job there. There is another one in the area of rebuilding the muscle of the diaphragm muscle for intubated patients that is doing as well very well, and that has been able to navigate these gaps successfully. There is another company in the trials area in oncology who is doing an excellent job, and probably the CEO is here, and that has been able to navigate through good cash flow management this period of uncertainty. So there are many, and allow me not to mention names, if you don't mind.
Thanks.
If you want to know the name of the startups, you're going to have to chat them up after this panel.
Or invite me to a beer. Maybe I can then speak more.
Well, let's ask Sarah. So, what's your experience? Because you are early stage startup. So, how do
Correct.
you, how have you financed yourself till the day?
Yes, that's an excellent question. I love my team to be here and actually show you some of the pictures of the hard times that we had. But through hard times, you actually find alternative strategies, right? So as Alejo was mentioning, the de-risking is something that we started to do also. So by de-risking, we decided not to go straight for private funding, but instead to go through those stages that I was mentioning before. We decided to take part in several acceleration programs that would provide some of the funding. But then through the wildcard program, we came across the opportunity of segmenting some of the modules that we have in our software for detection, treatment, and monitoring of mental health. And those segments, those modules that could already be implemented into market, we started launching very early on. And so we started bootstrapping along the way whilst developing the rest of the software and validating along the way. So I would divide it between 3 different routes that I would recommend out of the healthcare startups. The first would be more scientific research funding that you can get very early on for that validation stage. And then also take part in several open innovation programs, because that's when you can actually speak to your customer and when you can actually get some of the funding for development. Through one of these programs, we actually got to know one of our current customers who we are developing a product, part of the modules for. And so you actually can get to develop with your own customer if you get there with an idea that is solidly developed and they accept the opportunity to develop it with you. So we went through those 2 paths. And the third one would obviously be government grants that we actually are very lucky. Here in Spain, we have several grants that are dedicated not only to healthcare, but to technology type of startups. And we have applied to several of those and got through some of them. And also public and private type of grants were very helpful in getting into the hospital environment that is generally quite hard to break through.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. And with that funding, what are you expecting to achieve?
That's a wonderful question. So,
Sky's the limit.
yeah, this is the one that I'm currently working on. Through that funding, we are developing the product with the customers, as I was mentioning before. So we want to get those KPIs that I know that the investors that I've already spoken to are looking for. So the idea is to prepare early, far before you open your funding round, to actually know what the investors are looking for and have that data ready. So in order to do that, we want to get the validation, not just from the clinical point of view in this case, but market validation. How many of the customers are actually getting those benefits that we know that in the lab we can achieve? So market validation would be the answer there.
Great, thank you. So you have mentioned one of our programs, so the wildcard, but we have many others. So I would like to ask you, to you, Anna, so what other initiatives of programs are happening, that they can support the entrepreneurs and startups along their journey?
So I mentioned the Venture Center of Excellence, and this is a very exciting program that is in partnership with the European Investment Fund. But let me circle back and take you to the earlier stages to give you an example of an earlier stage program other than Wildcard that we are starting to develop given the need that our partners have demonstrated and also the ecosystem need to connect tech transfers and also have a federated approach across Europe. So what we're essentially trying to build is a pan-European network of deep tech venture builders, right? And in that same vein, unsurprisingly, this program is called the Deep Tech Venture Builder. So if you're interested, if you are a company that, let's say a VC that is interested in diversifying your assets, not only with companies, but also with IP. We're seeing different investors have come up and asked us that, in these times, in these trying times, that they'd like to diversify their assets further, right? And so what we're trying is to connect this incredible research that's stuck in a drawer somewhere or that's stuck in a team and have that actually make it to investor portfolios. And so we're really excited to be doing that. And, if you are interested in this program, regardless of whether you are a corporate looking to take on additional assets and diversify your portfolio and benefit from collaborating with European organizations such as EIT Health, definitely reach out to us.
Great. Thank you, Anna.
Shameless plug.
No, and among the companies that we are investing, we have several that have participated in those programs, and we can only recommend them, not only because of the quality, but also because of the ability to transform those companies and bring them to the next level, from the regional level into the European level. So, congrats.
And that was not scripted.
So, well, I'll come back to you, Alejo. So, how do you, because I know that, your current fund are looking for like or late seed or B or Series A. So, how do you help those companies to arrive to your stage where you can really invest on them?
Yeah. Good question, and also maybe a little bit long answer. Maybe we can summarize it in doing the same things but better, and so that we can be more selective. What does this mean? So I hear a lot this minimum viable product. I think we need to move from this to the maximum viable product today. Because in health, you really need a robust proposition so that it survives the whole validation, and at the end, you are able to put it into the market. It's not the first thing, oh, I got the diagnostic right in this very specific case of patients, let's go. We recommend always to build a robust system before going out. You avoid a lot of regulatory hurdles, you avoid a lot of difficulties later on in the way. So maximum viable product, and I'm not giving lessons to anyone. I'm looking at you because I know you are in the good path already. Also, it's very helpful to look to the whole value chain right from the beginning. We tend to think that startups are just innovation, are just ideas, but startups are companies, are small companies. So if we take a look to them from all the elements of the value chain right from the beginning, and we think, okay, that's a product, but let's design this product so that there is a channel for it. Or let's design this product so that it can pass the regulatory hurdles, the regulatory barriers a little bit better. So if we take a look at everything and we design bearing in mind all the elements of the value chain, then at the end, everything becomes easier, and the scalability is also easier. Look for support of venture builders. We've spoken about that, and I will get the beer from you later as well.
Definitely.
But no, honestly, this is really of a lot of help. So they have a lot of capacity, and there is a very large network of very experienced people that can provide help through these programs, and there are many companies that have achieved to get to the next level through them. So that's something we also recommend very, very thoroughly. And once again, develop the X factor, the uniqueness. So I already feel that you are unique in your company. So pull from it and create a proposition that is really different from everybody else. Always bearing in mind who is close to you, which are the potential competitors, which are the potential technologies that can disrupt. Bear always that in mind. Have this outside-in view instead of the inside-out view. And yeah, maybe one last thing. Also a little bit personal, so I take the guilt on this if you don't like it. But for me, money should not be the objective. So money is the consequence of all these elements properly done. And then if you do all these elements properly, money will come. Don't worry. Forget the gap in funding, forget whether this investor is not liking you or this other one, yes. Money will come if you do the things right. So.
Thanks, Alejo. Well, that's the maximum viable product. It's something, it's tough, but well, I guess that the ones that makes the trip are very hard to, very tough companies.
I was obviously exaggerating a little bit. I was just making a point that basically we should not do only the minimum, but just go into a much more robust proposition from the beginning.
Thank you. You also have been talking about the collaborating, so to de-risk all the process and the value chain, a very complex value chain. So Sarah, in your case, so how you have been struggling with identifying the right partners and who to talk with So can you give us some tips on that?
Absolutely. Once you get researchers out the lab, we're quite afraid generally. So for me, it was quite a shift becoming the CEO of Medea, because I started actually knocking at all the doors that I possibly could. First, from the target customer, right? So we started from professionals. We started talking to professionals in all healthcare settings. Private, public, small clinics, even standalone professionals. And we did that through so many interviews and so many small validations of the product that were so insightful for us to understand who can be our partner, where are these professionals, and who's going to pay for our product in the end. So right now we count with a public-private collaboration with 2 hospitals in the public healthcare system, and also with a network of private mental health clinics here in Spain. And these partners have been key when it comes to market access, validation, and development, as I was mentioning before. And also, of course, we haven't really left the research institutions altogether. We still have our universities, 2 universities here in Spain, but also a network of international universities who are helping us through those validation stages from the science perspective. And not only there, we now have also accelerators and several partners that come from the more business ecosystem. They're absolutely necessary, because coming from that clinical perspective, we also needed the business and market access point of view. And in that case, I would highly suggest to all first-time founders like myself to get somebody on your team who's also more experienced, who's perhaps been in previous startup companies. So having that perspective has to be a 360 views. You can't do it by yourself. You need to have a network.
Great question, great answer. Sarah, so, well, we are almost 3 minutes to go. So Anna, if you want to add something, any other questions otherwise? Talia, Mike.
So earlier today we were listening healthcare professionals, so for physician nurses that have great ideas, but they don't know how to start. They don't have this entrepreneurial mindset. So my question is, are there programs out there that connect kind of like the dots? Great potential, they know the patients, they know the system, with people or programs that can help them evolve and entrepreneur. I don't know if there are specific programs out there that might help them, because I think many are here today, so it would be great.
So I don't have the answer, but I can tell that this is a great question, because indeed there is a lot of knowledge there, and it's not been captured as a potential startup. But
Well, the first thing I would say is, well, that's the mic. I would say that the first off, I mean, Deep Tech Venture Builder is a program that we have in progress. It's our adapted early stage offer, given the current climate. And I would say that we do have an earlier stage flagship programs, and these are all available online. I mean, we have basically everywhere that covers from the inception of an idea all the way through pre-IPO. So actually the program that Medea participated in, Wildcard, was an example of such program, but we even have earlier stage, we have educational programs as well, and innovation programs, which are fascinating. In fact, maybe Johan, you can give us a little more insight into the earlier stage innovation.
Yeah, well, but apart, of course, of our programs, please visit our website. But I would recommend for the early stage, if you've come from the hospital, first talk to your innovation unit. If your hospital doesn't have yet, there is other platforms, ITEMA's platform, for instance, here in Spain, that can support you in the TRLs very, very low. But also, it's just to try to develop your idea, connect if you have the unmet need, that I think it's the most important thing. So just try to connect with universities that has the tech, or research centers, and later incubate to try to develop your idea in the local ecosystems. And then it's what we do at Data Health, is connecting these local ecosystems to find what you don't have locally, we can connect it Europeanly.
Exactly. Actually, EIT Health, just to follow up on that, also shameless plug for the organization, but it's true, like since our founding, We have different co-location centers. So now there are different different innovation hubs across Europe. So depending on what market this hypothetical doctor with a great idea is in, they would definitely or should reach out to one of our representatives so we can help them situate themselves in the regional ecosystem that they're present in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I think we are almost out of time. So if there is any other questions, otherwise, thank you very much, everyone, for being here today, especially to the panelists. And well, see you later.
Thank you.